Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're taking a deep dive into something pretty fascinating, the place where neuroscience meets manifestation. Now, I know when you hear manifestation, you might think, oh, isn't that just wishful thinking? But today, we're diving into the work of Dr. Jim Doughty. He's a Stanford neurosurgeon, and he says it's anything but. And that's what makes this so interesting is not about, chanting affirmations or magic crystals. Dr. Doughty brings a very scientific perspective. He actually explains how manifestation works within the brain, in the actual wiring of our brains. Pretty cool. And here's where it gets even more intriguing. Dr. Doughty, he doesn't just operate on brains, he also meditates. He's a mindfulness practitioner, so he brings decades of personal experience along with the research. So let's get into it. First of all, you might think manifestation is all about wishing, but Dr. Doughty, he reveals a key insight. It's actually a neurological process. Yeah, a neurological process that we can learn to control, to understand. He debunks the myth of just sending out good vibes, hoping for the best.
Instead, he emphasizes it's a process happening within the structure and function of our brains. Amazing. And a big part of this, and you'll hear this a lot in his work, is the power of belief. And his own story shows this. He had a really rough upbringing. Poverty, difficult family, a lot of negativity. But a chance encounter with a woman who taught him mindfulness and visualization techniques, it changed everything for him. Using those techniques, he started to actually rewrite his own narrative, his internal narrative, shifting from a mindset of limitations to one of possibility. It's almost like he rewired his brain. He rewired his brain to believe in his potential. And that shift, he argues, literally changed his whole life. He went from a kid with these immense challenges to, a world-renowned neurosurgeon. Pretty powerful example of the mind shaping reality. Now, to understand how this works, Dr. Doughty, he gets into the nervous system, specifically the difference between what he calls fear mode and heart mode. Fear mode, that's driven by our sympathetic nervous system, and it's basically our fight or flight response. We all know, right? It kicks in when we're stressed, anxious, muscles tense up, heart's racing. We're in survival mode. And here's where it gets tricky. Dr. Doughty explains that when we're in that fight or flight mode, it's like our brain puts on these blinders. We can't even see the opportunities that could lead us to our goals. It's like our brain's just trying to survive, and it can't even think about a brighter future, But heart mode, this is different. It's driven by the parasympathetic nervous system. It's our rest and digest state. We feel calmer, more connected. We're open to new possibilities. And this is where the magic happens. Our brains and our bodies, they're actually primed for positive change in this state. We're more open to opportunities. We connect with others more easily. And we're even inspired to take those bold actions that actually move us toward our goals. So the question is, how do we get out of fear mode and into heart mode? And how do we make heart mode our natural setting, the state we operate from? Well, this is where Dr. Doughty's neuroscience expertise really comes in. He breaks down the 4 key brain networks that are involved in manifestation. And he says understanding how they work together is crucial for rewiring our subconscious. First, we have the default mode network. Think of it like your brain's inner storyteller. It's constantly telling a story about who you are and what the world is like. It's where all our beliefs live, positive and negative. So if your default mode network, it's stuck on repeat, I'm not good enough or I'll never succeed, well, you're basically manifesting those beliefs. But here's the good news. Dr. Doughty says we can rewrite these stories. If we consciously choose to focus on positive things, new beliefs that empower us, we can gradually change our default mode network. Of course, it's not easy. Those negative stories, they tend to stick around. But if we're consistent, if we make that effort, we can shift the narrative. But how does this work? What's going on in our brain when we start to introduce these new positive thoughts and beliefs? Well, that's where the other brain networks come in. And by seeing how they work together, we start to see how manifestation actually works. Okay, so we've got this default mode network kind of humming along in the background, shaping how we see ourselves in the world. But it doesn't work alone, right? There's also what Dr. Doughty calls the task positive network. And that one really kicks in when we decide something is important enough to actually, take action. And within that network, we've got 3 key players: the salience network, the attention network, and the executive control network. They work together like a team, each one with a specific job to do to help turn our desires into reality. Pretty cool, right? So the salience network, think of it like a filter, constantly scanning for what's important, what deserves our attention. So if we're always feeding it negative self-talk, those limiting beliefs, well, guess what? That's what it's going to focus on. More negativity. But, and this is so interesting, if we flood our minds with positive affirmations, really visualize what we want, thoughts that are really aligned with our desires, the salience network picks up on that. It's like it says, hey, this is important. Let's pay attention to this. And once something's been flagged as important, the attention network steps in. It's like a bloodhound, sniffing out opportunities and resources that match those newly flagged important thoughts and desires. You start noticing things you maybe didn't see before. A book that addresses a problem you're having, meeting someone who has the expertise you need, even a sudden burst of inspiration, those things were probably always there, but now your brain is tuned in. And finally, there's the executive control network. This is the action taker in the brain. Once the salience network identified something as important and the attention network is logged on, the executive control network takes over, helps us go after those goals. So you see how these four networks work together. That's how manifestation goes from just wishful thinking to actually making things happen. It's about aligning our thoughts and our feelings and our actions. And it all starts with understanding just how powerful our brains really are. But how do we actually do this? How do we reprogram our subconscious and make those positive changes stick? Well, Dr. Doty, he suggests a few techniques based on his experience and the science, all about consciously embedding those new beliefs into our brains. He's big on repetition, writing things down, and visualization. He even walks us through his own routine. First thing in the morning, he does breathing exercises, to activate his parasympathetic nervous system, a way to shift into that heart mode we talked about. Then he just spends a few moments reflecting on the simple joy of being alive, cultivating gratitude, a sense of wonder, and really anchoring himself in the present moment. And finally, he visualizes his top 3 goals, writes them down, repeats them silently, out loud, really feeling the emotions of achieving them. And he emphasizes this isn't a one-time thing, it's about consistency. Showing up for yourself every day, making these practices part of your life, just like brushing your teeth. But there's something I think is really important, and it gets to the heart of what Dr. Doty is trying to say. Manifestation isn't just about getting what we want. It's about becoming the kind of person who attracts those things naturally. It's an inside-out process, And a big part of that, he argues, is focusing on service and connection. He explains that as humans, we're wired for connection, for contributing to something bigger than ourselves. And when we focus on helping others, on making a positive impact on the world, it shifts our perspective. We tap into a deeper sense of purpose and meaning. And that makes us more magnetic to positive experiences. It's like by focusing outward, we create a ripple effect that benefits us too. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking, wait, what if I'm already burnt out? Shouldn't I focus on myself first? And that's a valid point. Self-care is essential. But Dr. Doty's point is that real fulfillment, it often comes from a balance between giving and receiving. And sometimes the most powerful way to get out of that fear mode into heart mode is to focus on how we can help others. It's not about neglecting our own needs. It's recognizing that our well-being is connected to the well-being of others. And speaking of well-being, Dr. Doty emphasizes authenticity and gratitude. Being true to ourselves and feeling grateful for what we have, even when things are tough, helps shift us into that heart mode. It's like tuning ourselves to a frequency of abundance, of appreciation. And that, in turn, allows us to attract more of those things. So let's pause here. Let's think about what we've learned. We've explored how manifestation isn't some mystical thing. It's a process that happens in our brains. We looked at the key networks involved, how they shape our perceptions, our beliefs, our actions. We even started to unpack some techniques for rewiring our subconscious, aligning ourselves with what we want. But here's the thing. Life is messy, right? What happens when things are really tough? Can manifestation really help then? Dr. Beardy, he's a neurosurgeon, so he's seen a lot of suffering. He knows life can be really hard. He's faced challenges, even after becoming successful. And he says no matter what our circumstances, we always have the power to choose our perspective, to stop those negative thoughts that can make us feel stuck. He reminds us that even when things are difficult, we can still find things to be grateful for. And even feeling grateful for small things can shift our energy. It's like choosing to look for the little bits of light, those moments of beauty or kindness that remind us there's still good in the world, even inside ourselves. He also talks about being kind to ourselves, recognizing that those negative beliefs, they often come from things that happened to us, especially when we were kids, things we couldn't control. And he encourages us to be understanding, not judgmental. Those stories we tell ourselves, I'm not good enough, or I'll never succeed, they often come from a place of hurt. And by understanding those stories, we can start to loosen their hold on us. That's where journaling can be helpful. Dr. Doty suggests using it to process those past experiences, to start separating from those old stories. When we write down our thoughts, we can see them more objectively. We realize they're just stories, not the absolute truth. It's like giving those thoughts space so they don't feel so intense. And then in that space, we can start to choose a different story, a more empowering one. And here's a fascinating point he makes. He connects this inner work of manifestation with our impact on the world. He explains that the energy from our hearts, it actually extends outside our bodies, 3 to 5 feet. Think about that. So whether we're in fear mode or heart mode, it affects the people around us. When we're negative, angry, we're sending that energy out. But when we're feeling love, compassion, gratitude, we radiate something completely different, something that draws people in, creates a more positive environment. So by choosing those heart-centered emotions, we're not just helping ourselves, we're impacting everyone around us. It's like we become these beacons of positive energy, subtly influencing everything around us. Okay, but let's get back to the practical side of manifestation. Dr. Doherty shares some tips. He emphasizes finding a quiet space where we can shift from fear mode to heart mode. Maybe it's breathing exercises, meditation, spending time in nature, or just finding a place where we can be present without distractions, creating a space physically and mentally where we can tune in to our inner world. And he reminds us it's not about forcing things, trying to control the universe. It's about setting intentions, taking action when we feel inspired, and then letting go of attachment to specific outcomes. It's about surrendering to the flow, trusting that the universe has a bigger plan, and allowing things to unfold in their own time. He even tells a story about this. Early in his life, he manifested material things, a nice car, a big house, things he thought would make him happy. And he got them. But he realized something important. Even after achieving those things, he still felt empty. It's like he was chasing something that couldn't truly satisfy him. It wasn't until he shifted his focus from what I want to what I need that he started to feel real happiness. He realized that when we chase things for external validation, for approval from others, it never really fills that void. But when we focus on living a life of purpose and meaning, when our desires are aligned with our true selves and with helping others, that's when we find lasting satisfaction. He says it's okay to enjoy material things, but they shouldn't be what defines our worth. It's about finding that balance between appreciating what we have and recognizing that true fulfillment comes from something deeper. So how do we embed those desires, those deeper needs, into our subconscious? Dr. Doherty shares a technique that combines writing, repetition, and visualization. He says, write down your top 3 goals. Read them silently. Read them out loud. And then visualize them as if they've already happened. Really feel those emotions of achieving those goals. Engage all your senses. Make the visualization as real as possible. Again, he stresses consistency. Make it a regular practice, maybe first thing in the morning or last thing at night. It's like planting seeds in our minds, seeds that will grow into the reality we want. But why does this work? Why is visualization so powerful? Well, he explains that our brains, they can't actually tell the difference between something that's real and something vividly imagined. Think about that. When we visualize something over and over, we're training our brains to expect it, to make it easier to get there. And there's another key element here, positive emotions. Dr. Doherty says they're crucial for manifestation. When we feel gratitude, compassion, love, our brains and bodies, they work better. Our thoughts are clearer, our hearts beat more steadily, and we're more likely to make good choices. It's like positive emotions create this harmony inside us, helping us move toward what we want. He even shares research showing that just taking a few minutes each day to write down 3 things we're grateful for can have a huge impact on our well-being and our ability to manifest. It's so simple, but so powerful. Like we're teaching our brains to look for the good, which then attracts more good into our lives. And talking about positive things, Dr. Doherty also emphasizes self-love and self-acceptance. He knows a lot of our negative beliefs come from feeling unworthy. He encourages us to challenge those beliefs, to affirm our goodness, to be kind to ourselves. It's like choosing to be on our own side, treating ourselves with the same kindness we'd offer to a friend. He reminds us that we are all worthy of love, happiness, and success no matter what. It's a powerful message, really transformative. We are inherently worthy just because we exist. Our worth isn't tied to what we achieve or what others think. Now, this is where things get really interesting. We're going to talk about synchronicity and its role in manifestation. Dr. Doherty explains that when we're in a heart mode, our subconscious is always looking for opportunities that align with our desires. It's like being at a party, hearing your name mentioned across the room. Our brains are tuned to pick up information that's relevant to us. And the same is true for our goals. When we're clear about what we want and we're radiating positive energy, we notice these synchronicities, those seemingly coincidental events that guide us towards our goals. He says they're not just chance, but reflections of our subconscious working with the universe. It's like we're tapping into a hidden intelligence, a cosmic dance between our intentions and what happens in our lives. But there's a catch, something many people struggle with: attachment. Dr. Doherty explains that when we get too attached to specific outcomes, to how we think things should be, we create resistance. We start to worry, doubt, and fear, and that blocks the flow of manifestation. It's like trying to force a square peg into a round hole. He says we need to let go of that attachment, trust the process, and focus on the journey, not just the destination. Sometimes things don't happen exactly as we expect. Sometimes there are detours that lead to something even better. It's about surrendering, trusting that even when things don't go to plan, there's a higher intelligence guiding us towards our best good. And this leads to the importance of authenticity. Dr. Doherty says when we're true to ourselves, when we let go of pretending, our energy becomes more powerful. He encourages us to embrace our flaws, to acknowledge our strengths and weaknesses, and to express ourselves without fear. He reminds us that it's our uniqueness that makes us special. When we try to be someone we're not, we create a disconnect inside ourselves, and that can block manifestation. It's like trying to run two different programs at the same time. But when our thoughts, feelings, and actions are aligned, that's when the magic happens. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about Dr. Doherty's work with compassion. He explains that humans are wired for compassion, for connection. And when we focus on helping others, we tap into a deeper purpose. He shares his experiences with the Dalai Lama, what he's learned about the neuroscience of compassion. He says that acts of kindness trigger the release of oxytocin, the love hormone, creating a sense of well-being and connection. He emphasizes that when we're compassionate, we attract more positive experiences. It's like by giving kindness, we create a ripple effect that comes back to us. It's not about doing good just to get something back, but recognizing that giving and receiving are connected. He encourages us to be kind in our everyday interactions, whether it's helping someone, listening, or just smiling at a stranger. Even small acts that can make a difference. And those acts might be the synchronicities that lead us to our own desired outcomes. But with all this talk about action and manifestation, there's one more thing Dr. Doherty emphasizes: living in the present moment. He explains that when we're stuck in the past or worried about the future, we miss the beauty of now. It's like we're living in a time warp, completely missing the richness of what's happening right now. He encourages us to be mindful, to bring our attention to the present, to appreciate the simple things. The past is gone, the future's uncertain, but this moment is all we truly have. It's the only place where we can really experience life. He suggests mindfulness practices like meditation or yoga, or even just focusing on our breath, training our minds to be more present, to step out of that time warp. And here's the key. When we're fully present, not lost in our thoughts, we're more open to guidance, to inspiration, to opportunities that support our journey. It's like we're creating a clear channel for the universe to communicate with us. But let's be real. In a world that wants everything instantly, being patient and trusting the process can be hard. But Dr. Doherty emphasizes that manifestation isn't about quick fixes. It's a commitment to personal growth, self-awareness, aligning ourselves with what we truly desire. It's a journey, not a destination, a process of evolving, growing. There will be ups and downs, and it's important to keep going even when we don't see immediate results. It's about trusting that the universe is working behind the scenes, even when we can't see it. He encourages us to celebrate our wins, learn from our setbacks, and trust that the universe is on our side, even when it doesn't feel like it. And speaking of embracing the journey, let's talk about intention. Dr. Doherty says our intentions, they're a guiding force, shaping our thoughts and actions. They're like a compass, pointing us in the direction we want to go. He stresses the importance of being clear about our intentions, both for our lives in general and for specific goals. It's about consciously choosing what we want to create, not just reacting to what's happening around us. He suggests writing down our intentions, visualizing them, and repeating them regularly. It's like we're making those desires more real, more tangible. But there's a crucial point here. He reminds us to be mindful of the energy we're putting out. If our intentions are coming from a place of fear or scarcity, we'll attract more of that. It's like sending out a signal of lack, and the universe responds with more lack. But when our intentions are rooted in love, abundance, a desire to do good, we create a different kind of energy, one that aligns with our best interests. It's about shifting our internal frequency to one of love, possibility, and abundance. And that brings us to a concept that's a bit tricky: detachment. Dr. Doherty explains that detachment doesn't mean giving up on what we want. It's about letting go of the need to control how things happen, trusting that the universe will bring what's best, even if it looks different than we imagined. It's about surrendering, recognizing that we don't always know what's best, and trusting that there's a higher plan. He encourages us to be open to possibilities, trusting that everything is unfolding as it should. He says that when we release our attachment, we create space for miracles. It's like opening our hands, letting go of our grip on how we think things should be, and allowing the universe to work its magic. So we've covered a lot in this deep dive. We've explored how manifestation works within our brains, debunked some myths, and learned practical techniques for aligning ourselves with our desires. We've talked about the power of belief, the importance of gratitude, and the transformative potential of service and connection. But most importantly, we've been reminded that we are the creators of our own reality. Our thoughts, our beliefs, our actions, they all shape the world around us. So as you go about your day, remember the power you hold within. Choose your thoughts wisely. Believe in yourself and take those inspired actions that move you toward the life you truly desire. The journey might not always be easy, but it's filled with incredible potential. And who knows, maybe those synchronicities are already guiding you toward something amazing. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.